Hey, I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of the AWM NFL podcast. My name is Riccardo Stewart. I'm your host, and I'm joined with my friends and coworkers here. And I want to take some time to be able to reintroduce you guys, especially new people who have been listening to the podcast. We got Zach Miller, who we call the Truth because of his knowledge, not only in the game of football, but his financial wisdom. I got my friend over here, Sam Acho, the mayor, because if you've seen Sam, if you've heard Sam, if you've been around Sam, you know that he gets everybody's vote. And then the last person we got here is Jeff Locke. We call him the professor, not only because of his wisdom and his unique understanding of finance, but he has the ability to be able to teach knowledge and be able to pass on the game. And so, guys, we wanted to take some time to be able to look at something we talk about internally a lot, and that is the athlete CEO. And one of the ways to think about it, for those of you who are listening, is there is the business of the NFL player. You put in the name. And then there's also the business of the NFL. And then what happens when those two overlap? And so in today's episode, I want to step back and talk about greatness and what does it look like to be elite? And particularly, how do these athletes, particularly NFL players, create that? And so the first thing that comes to mind is years ago, probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, there was a commercial that Adidas made. And it was a bunch of elite athletes around a table. It was soccer players, basketball players, football players, and they talked about what does it look like to create. And it was just this picture of athletes in themselves, they create value. It's not their agents, it's not their financial advisors, it's they themselves. And there's this almost like artist that comes to it of what does it look like to be able to create. And we know that there's a lot that goes in there. There's a lot of discipline, there's a lot of skill, there's a lot of knowledge that goes to being successful. And so I want to start first with you, Sam. How do NFL players begin to create value? And I'm going to ask you to use an example. I'm going to tee you up a little bit because there's been a few contracts that have been signed this summer. And so maybe pick an athlete and go, let's center in on how this person might have created value for himself.
Well, let's use Brock Purdy as an example of how to create value. I think of it very specifically. Each athlete, no matter if you're an athlete or a non-athlete, but we're talking specifically with athletes, you have a unique skill, gift, or ability. That's why the team drafted you. That's why you are where you are. The way to create value is by figuring out that skill and maximizing that skill. So for Brock Purdy, you talk about his intellectual capital, right? His mind. There was a recent podcast he did. He said about 40% of the time, he doesn't even see his receiver. And it sounds crazy, but for those of y'all who watch ball, like everybody on this podcast does, sometimes you'll see Brock Purdy throw a pass. It's like, dude, the receiver's not even out of his break yet. It's because he knows exactly where the receiver is supposed to be before the receiver gets there. Before the ball is snapped, he knows, okay, he has a general idea of what the safety is supposed to do, where the linebacker is supposed to be. So that's that idea of like, man, that intellectual prowess, that's what helps make Brock Purdy. But it's not just the good, it's also the bad. The first time I met Brock Purdy was in 2023 Super Bowl after his rookie year, and he had played in the NFC Championship. He tore his UCL. So I met him at the Super Bowl Radio Row in a sling. This dude was walking around in a sling. Now, you could argue this is before Brock Purdy was Brock Purdy, but the fact of the matter is the guy who just signed that contract that we're about to talk about went through a huge deal of adversity from being Mr. Irrelevant, the last guy picked in the NFL draft, to having a pretty solid rookie year, to all of a sudden gets injured in an NFC Championship game. But from that time till now, yes, it was years of rehab. Yes, it was years of belief, but it's also him understanding, okay, there's a runway that I have to attack this opportunity. So that's that intellectual capital, right? The physical capital we talked about. But also the last piece I'll say is Brock Purdy keeps his circle small. You think about, if you watch commercials, you'll see him on a few, you won't see him everywhere. Social media, you won't see him everywhere. He's very specific on who he partners with. So the way you create value is not just being a good or great football player on the field, but it's also knowing who's around you and maximizing your play and turning your brand into a business off of the field. And so that's the way, and that's a person I'll use Brock Purdy as an example, who had a great few years on the field, but notice you're seeing him pop up at Applebee's commercials and different car commercials, et cetera, so that off the field income is growing as well.
Jeff, just going back to my picture of the artist, right? I think about abstract art, and I'm going to surprise you guys a little bit here, a little Jackson Pollock. And usually you just see you go into the museum and you just see you're looking at, what is this? I'm like, oh, that's abstract. Well, when it comes to the athlete doesn't create an abstract. There's usually a story behind the success, or would say there's a grit or a grind behind the glory. And so Purdy has a story, because before he becomes the highest paid quarterback, before he becomes the NFL player, like I can even go back to being from Arizona, living in Arizona, watching him play in high school. So as you think about him creating, what's some of the story behind him building that human capital?
Yeah, I think not unique to Brock. Like all of us on this call know players. I mean, all of us ourselves. Like you have to go through adversity to create value. Like that's just the story of an NFL athlete, and Brock's no different. Right? I went to small high school in Arizona, totally overlooked, 3-star coming out, even though he was Gatorade National or Gatorade Arizona Player of the Year, took his team to the state championship. Still, couple offers, goes to Iowa State, becomes the dude though at Iowa State. Like becomes the QB right away, has a solid career at Iowa State. NFL draft time still. No one's really looking at him. Like he's maybe undrafted. We're not sure what's going to happen with this guy. Doesn't have what the NFL considers the physical traits he needs to make it happen. Right? And like Sam said, he goes Mr. Irrelevant, last pick in the draft. The 9th of the 9 QBs drafted that year. Of those 9 QBs, he's the only one still on the team that drafted him. Right? Only one of the 9. Crazy. Just 3 years ago. So adversity, injury, bounce back, right? Super Bowl appearance, Pro Bowl as a rookie, right? Now he's gotten that contract. But I imagine all the times, like when I was staying late after practice, getting there early to practice, doing all the off-season stuff, and picturing all the stuff Brock probably did to bounce back, not to bounce back, but to build himself up from where nobody thought he could get to.
Yeah. You guys know this. One of my favorite shows I love watching is Shark Tank. And I love to see what these entrepreneurs that build something, and then they'll come inside this room and they're trying to see like who's willing to invest in this value, this product that I've created. And you always wonder after somebody gives them their money, or if people say, no, we don't want you, like what happens with that story? And oftentimes the artist puts in the work and doesn't see the result of the work. What is that ultimate result, particularly as it looks like in money, Zach?
Well, for Brock, it looks like 265 million extension, and that's essentially what you want as an NFL player. You want to be paid the fair market value for what you bring to the field. And for reality, you're locked up for so long with the team being basically paid under what you should be being paid. You look at the rookie wage scale, you look at guys like Brock Purdy that are drafted late, they're playing on much smaller contracts than they would get otherwise. That's why there's free agency takes so long to get to, why there's franchise tags. All of those things exist to lower what you kind of are supposed to get. So for you to be able to play out a whole deal, get to either free agency or get that extension that you deserve, it takes a ton of sacrifice. And it's crazy to think like that is what human capital is. You are worth all this money. Your bank account just doesn't show it. It's just like being a small private company that IPO. It's just the same thing. You're actually finally realizing your value as a player. And to get that money, I mean, that's generational wealth when you get to kind of get those kind of deals. And so for Brock Purdy, the 5-year extension, $265 million, we'll break down, hey, what does guaranteed money mean? What does skill cap and injury? Like, what do those guarantees actually mean? And then what's a front-loaded contract versus a back-loaded contract? When you get the money in a contract matters. True guarantees, sometimes there's guarantees and then there's fully guaranteed. What's the difference between those two? The contracts are so complex that it takes, it's why the entire agent field exists, to be able to get the best contracts for guys. It's why players need agents. It's why all of that even exists, is to get paid what you deserve. It is extremely hard as an NFL player, but if you do the right things, you take care of business, that human capital, it does finally get realized. You get in the right position, you end up like Brock Purdy, you end up getting a deal that averages right along there on an average per year with the rest of the top quarterbacks in the league.
There's this beautiful picture there of the athlete being a CEO. And we said it on the onset of this particular episode. You got to understand the business of you as an NFL player. That not that you yourself is always a business. You are a person created in God. You got value, beauty, dignity, and so forth. But there's a business, and that you put in that physical, that intellectual, and that social work to be able to create value. What we want to talk about next in the next episode is looking at, okay, how do you monetize that? And particularly, what did those contracts look like? Or in essence, how did you merge the business of you with the business of the NFL? And so if there's something you heard today, I want to know more about this whole athlete CEO. How do I create value? Any questions you have, please reach out to us. You can shoot us a text. The number 602-989-5022.
This has been a production of AWM Capital, the Athlete Family Office. Reach out to the team at athletefamilyoffice.com or by calling or texting 602-989-5022. All opinions expressed by the hosts are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of AWM Capital. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon in any manner as professional advice or an endorsement of any practices, products, or services. There can be no guarantees or assurances that the views expressed here will be applicable to any particular facts or circumstances and should not be relied upon in any manner. You should consult your own advisors as to legal, business, tax, and other related matters concerning any investment. Clients and employees of AWM Capital may maintain positions in the securities or companies discussed in this podcast.